We retell a lot of traditional Manx stories in the Mona's Isle podcast, so I set the cast the challenge of telling me their take on one of the most famous of them all, the Buggane of St Trinians.
Well, have you ever heard about the Buggane of St Trinians?
So the Buggane of St Trinians is like our very own Isle of Man Grinch.
The Buggane was a large, sort of giant, terrifying character who would live up in the hills.
Imagine a giant, so like it's like a caricatured human in a way, but it's just huge.
A big, hairy monster.
I just remember hovering between my mum and dad before there were back seat belts, going past the church, and my dad telling me this story, and my dad was a Mancunian, so I don't even know where he got the story from.
St Trinian's, a fabulous church on the way to Peel, and as soon as it got built, the roof got blown off.
I've heard about the church without a roof. I remember being... The thing is, I have a terrible memory.
But obviously the church has no roof. And I was told by my dad, and what I tell my kids is that the Buggane was a Manx spirit that had a druid temple on that field. And then when the Christians arrived, they built a church, and and the Buggane was extremely upset by this.
The legend is that the Buggane would come down on an evening.
It was a frightful night, really blustery wind,
It's blowing a hoolie.
thunder and lightning.
Some kids go to torment the Buggane and daring each other to go near the Church of St Trinians.
He was driven mad by some people who were really tormenting him, and he was getting more and more and more irate.
So proceeded to blow the roof off the church.
Absolutely no roof on it at all.
And it is still like that to this day. Roof is gone. Roof is gone.
And every time they built the roof back on, the Buggane would blow it off again.
I told you not to get me to do this.
And there were a few attempts, I think, to rebuild the church roof over time, but he just kept on coming back down, and to thwart everybody's efforts.
Believe me, unless you're a roofer, the Buggane is not someone you want to bump into.
The other interesting thing is that it wasn't a usable church ever. So there was never a service in the church, so therefore it was never consecrated ground. And because it's not consecrated ground, no animals will ever be in that field. And every time I drive past it and there's a flock of sheep or horses in there now, I go, you scared me to death with that, Dad.
And I think in the end they just gave up. That's what the church ruin is today, basically. So there's lots of stories made about him, and I think they kind of like glorified the idea of this sort of terrifying character that he could also rip the roofs off everybody's house, but he just sort of seemed to have an issue with that particular one church for some reason.
So, how do you tell the story? Let us know in the comments, or subscribe for more Manx myths.